After 3 games of the World Chess Championship final in New York, everything still level, 3 draws. But in the 3rd game, Magnus Carlsen came incredibly close to winning. A very long, tough game, an exhausting game. That was played on the Monday. Game 4 was played the very next day on the Tuesday. Now, how would that long game affect the players? Well, in the opening, Karjakin with white played the Spanish, but didn't get anything out of the opening. In fact, Carlsen took the initiative, and I really don't know what's happening to the much vaunted Russian opening preparation, because really it was not very impressive. Carlsen looked good out of the opening and indeed got a solid advantage, and they quickly went into an endgame where really only 2 results were possible, either a draw or a win for Carlsen. Now, we joined the game after 41 moves, 41 King E2 just being played by Karjakin. Carlsen has a classic advantage here. 2 bishops in an open position with play on 2 wings, so clearly there's play on the king side, but also there's a weak pawn on b2. Added to that, Carlsen has a very clear plan here of advancing his kingside pawn majority, supported by the king and of course the bishops. If you look on the other side of the board, Karjakin's pawn majority at the moment is crippled by that pawn on c4. So all in all, to my eyes, a very workable advantage for Carlsen. Let's see what happened. He played g5, good move, and you can see, well, we've seen over the past few games in New York how strong a knight can be, even against the bishop. But here, this is a terrible knight. Squares dominated, any outposts dominated by the pawns, and this is a dreadful position for white. And round about here, I thought that Carlsen had every chance of winning this position. Here, Carlsen played king g6. I think there's a very strong move here, and that's to play bishop d5, threatening the pawn. Let me show you the main idea. So pawn advances to g3, and now, well, a very counterintuitive move for black. Pawn to g4. Now it looks very odd because now, of course, white's bishop has a clear blockade on f4. But the point of g4 is to take away yet another square from the knight. So you can see all these squares are covered by pawns and bishop. And this is the problem. So this is about dominating white's knight. Now let me show you the basic idea of this. That if the knight is dominated, so if it retreats to d1, the only available square, now if it can bounce around to e3 and the bishop comes to f4, then white will be fine. But here's the point, that straight away black snaps in with the bishop, whips off that knight, and here black has a clear plan of exchanging bishops and winning the king and pawn endgame. Let's just see how this works in practice. So the black king centralizes. I mean, of course there are other variations, but I just want to demonstrate the main idea that black has here. And clearly the bishop can't retreat because the pawn drops. White has to go in for the pawn endgame, and this is sort of fun. Well, this is a classic kind of king and pawn endgame. White has no more moves on the queen side. This majority is crippled. Zugzwang. The king has to retreat, and now black creates a passed pawn, and this is very simple to win, of course. Well, let me show you what happens in practice. We may as well go to the very end. And here, white has to move the pawn and its mate in a couple of moves. So that's the basic idea. So I think bishop d5 is a very strong move, but g4 is slightly counterintuitive. Carlsen played king g6, also a good move. Just bringing the king back into the middle. And I think Karjakin plays really the only chance here, g4. So what he's trying to do is gain a square for the knight at the very least. Okay, these were the next move. Bishop b6, all fine. a5, kind of a waiting move. Knight d1. Okay, here is the next big moment in the game. I think black is still doing very well here. I thought bishop e6 was the move. Now, sooner or later, white is going to have to trade pawns, because at some moment f4 is going to come, and then bishop takes pawn, and once black has two connected pass pawns, that's it. So sooner or later, I think this trade is necessary. And after, whoops, I beg your pardon, let me just come back to that. As I said, sooner or later, I think this trade on f5 is necessary. And now black's king starts to enter into white's position. And to me, this is a kind of classic case of where white has two weaknesses, or two things to take care of. He has to take care of the g-pawn, and also he has to take care of the fact that black's king might enter into the position and snap off the b2 pawn. So, for example, here, slowly but surely, white is going backwards here. Something like this. This is pretty disastrous. It just gives you a rough idea of what's going on. Typical kind of endgame. But here, instead of keeping the position open, Carlsen played f4. Now, this is either very good or very bad. It's a very ambitious move, because he would like to obviously take that pawn, and then that would be that. The problem is that black's king can no longer gain entry to the position on the king side. Now, first of all, white establishes a blockade with the knight. So you can see for the first time, white's knight actually finds some kind of security. So, it's still not incredibly active, but at least it's protected. It's protecting the g-pawn, and it's preventing black's king from entering into the position via e4. Now, Carlsen clearly thought that he could break this blockade. It certainly looks awful for white. This knight is almost completely immobilized. But the real question is whether black's king can gain entry into the position. Now, Carlsen tried very hard. First of all, he brought his king all the way over to the queen side and tried to gain entry via a4. Well, he got so far. This is as far as he got. The white king can be forced away, and the king makes it to b3, but unfortunately it goes no further. Carlsen tried incredibly hard to win this position, but basically he couldn't break through. White had a blockade. This is move 61. The game actually went to move 94 before the players agreed to a draw. But really, by this point, it was quite clear that Carlsen was not going to win the game. So I think this is a massive disappointment for Magnus Carlsen. I would have put money on him winning that position after move 40 any day of the week. So Karjakin got a bit lucky, but still he found some big moves to draw this game, and was very cool in his defense. So after 4 games in the final, everything is still level. 4 draws. Carlsen is getting close, but Karjakin is holding firm. Wednesday is a free day in New York. Game 5 will be played on Thursday.